Industry leaders and workers are calling on Ottawa to retaliate against doubled U.S. steel and aluminum tariffs that jumped up to 50% after a meeting with Industry Minister Melanie Joly.
Urgency is key. We need bold, targeted action to defend workers and to protect our economic sovereignty.
So the Canadian Labour Congress president's comments come after Prime Minister Mark Carney held off on implementing new retaliatory tariffs on the U.S. after they jumped up to 50%. So for a closer look at Canada's options this morning, we've brought in Ian Lee, Associate Professor at Carleton University's Sprott School of Business. So, Ian, what is behind the strategy of not imposing counter tariffs right away?
Because it isn't addressing the real problem. And I'm not here to defend Donald Trump, I assure you, because I'm opposed to all tariffs everywhere in the world, no matter what they're imposed on and for why. With one exception, when there is dumping by some countries of their product below cost. That's explicitly allowed in the WTO agreement. There are countries, starting with China and India and Turkey, that are dumping steel into Canada. In fact, Trump specified this in his executive order imposing the tariffs on Canada, saying you're letting these countries in and dumping steel into your country, and then you're essentially pushing your steel into the U.S. We're not. The critics who are criticizing both Trump and Mr. Carney for not imposing tariffs are chasing after the wrong issue. The problem is dumping by other countries, starting with China, and we are not focusing on that. In fact, the president of the Steel Producers Association said that. The CEO of Algoma said that. The stats are showing this because there's widespread evidence of the dumping. So we are not dealing with the source of the problem.
Industry Minister Melanie Joly yesterday said Ottawa is weighing how to respond. I'm going to play a clip for you of what she had to say after yesterday's meetings.
We're in solution mode. Our goal is to make sure that we are there to support the sector at the same time where we know we have to have a stronger domestic sector. When I say domestic sector, I mean that...
How do you interpret what she had to say there?
It sounds like protectionism again, and I have been opposed to protectionism my entire life. That's why I've supported every free trade agreement since 1988. Protectionism is the antithesis of open competitive markets. Protectionism drives prices up to domestic consumers. It exploits. Protectionism is an Orwellian phrase because it does the opposite of protecting Canadians. It hurts and harms Canadians, whether it's supply management, where it doubles the price of milk and dairy products to low-income and modest-income people, or any retaliatory tariff that raises the price. It's a tax on Canadians. So that's the last thing we need. We have to get to the source of the problem. If there's dumping, and there is, we should be dealing with that problem, and we should be. This should be a wake-up call. We absolutely have to have an agreement for a new comprehensive trade and security agreement with the United States.
And, you know, we can assume that this is one of the tactics in renegotiating that new agreement. Hopefully this is the end goal. The Canadian Labour Congress also warned that the effect of Trump's doubled tariffs, they're going to be felt within days. They're going to be felt today, as a matter of fact. There are 23,000 steel and 9,500 direct steel and aluminum jobs in this country. You know, we asked this question of somebody from the industry. I'm curious to know what you say. How long can these industries survive 50% tariffs?
Well, they're large companies, and I'm not trivializing this, and I agree with those numbers completely. I'm evidence-based, and yes, it's going to be devastating. These very large companies obviously have very large reserves relative to small business. That's why when you look at the bankruptcy stats, as I do, they're overwhelmingly small businesses that fail because they have so few resources, as I learned years ago lending to small SMEs. So the bigger companies have more resources. They have got more runway. That does not mean that they have a license or any kind of a capacity to print money. They don't have their own internal Bank of Canada, so they can't print it. That just means that they can last longer in a very dire situation, but at some point, chickens come home to roost, which means they won't go down like 10 pins in 10 days or 30 days. They've got more reserves than that. They've got borrowing capacity in the bond markets. They've got lines of credit with banks. That does not mean we shouldn't be working night and day to get an agreement with the United States to end all tariffs on Canada completely in exchange for a comprehensive agreement.
Well, the Prime Minister seems to agree with you. He has said that is job number one, priority number one. Thanks for joining us this morning. Ian Lee, have a great weekend.
My pleasure, Anne-Marie. Thank you.
If you like that video, make sure to subscribe to the Your Morning YouTube feed, where you can find all kinds of new content posted every weekday morning.